Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Well, with all the hoopla going around about the LBL, I decided that I'd share a couple more encounters and just information. As you know, I've been vocal once on my channel about the new information that arose. I've spoken to Mr. Baker. You guys know him as Kumbo, but I still call him Mr. Baker. Good friend of mine. And I spoke with Jody Cook the other day. I really don't want to get into it until I can further discuss it with some other people. But I've got encounters that I want to share with you. So before we do that, though, a couple links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch store to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Those links are in the description below. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook version. They were written by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. They are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. The links to those are in the description as well. Now, I've taken enough of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Today's first part of the upload. I grew up near the LBL, and there was a place called Vampire Hotel that was actually a foundation from a hotel during the 20s. That was torn down in the late 90s. Now, I never personally met a vampire in Murray or around the LBL, and have no clue as to why people called it Vampire Hotel. But we spent many a night there partying and never saw anything weird except melting candles and wavy walls. I do, however, have a story that was told to me by two of my uncles. At a bottom near Marshall County, Cowway County line, very close to Kentucky Lake, which is the LBL basically. It really scared the crap out of me when I was a kid because they swore they would never go back to that area. And they are real outdoorsmen who don't get scared very easily, or so I thought. The story goes that my two uncles were coon hunting. They had 3 coon dogs with them, their best by their account. They heard a yelp ahead. Well, the 2 dogs went running by them like they were being chased by something, and the other one was nowhere to be found. Now, most people don't know this, but most coon dogs are mean as hell and don't back down from anything. Not in West Kentucky, anyway. My uncle said that when he saw the dogs running back toward them, something bad was going on because this never happened. He said they made their way to where they heard that yelp and found the missing dog. It had been attacked by something and he had to shoot it because it was so badly hurt. They had no clue what could have done this other than a bear or some other really big animal. But in this area of the country, we really don't have big predators that we know of. A black bear was spotted in northwest Tennessee in the early 2000s, but never in the LBL. Now, the really weird stuff started happening, they said. When they were shining their lights around the dog's body, they said they didn't see any tracks, and then they heard a loud scream behind them from where they had just been, and it was like nothing they ever heard before. Well, at this point, they decided to shag ass back to their truck, and something threw a rock or something at them. They couldn't tell what was thrown, but something flew through the air and hit the tree. On their way back to the truck, they said they kept hearing things in the brush, and then they would hear something in the trees like they were being stalked by something that was able to get into the trees, and they never did see anything except branches moving like something had just been there. They said they fired some shots to try to scare whatever it was that was following them, but whatever it was followed them all the way back to their truck. When they got to the truck, the 2 other dogs were lying down in their cages, and they said they never hunted that area again. Now, this story was told to me by 2 uncles who did their fair share of drinking while hunting. You only coon hunt at night, so it definitely was dark, but I see no reason that they would lie about it. I know the dog did die. I can only add that I never seen either of them look scared, especially while hunting, but they said something was out there, and they never encountered it before. They had lived there their whole life since the 40s. Something killed Uncle Dale's favorite dog, which I would have thought would have pissed him off more than anything, to make him want to kill whatever was out there, but he swore he never would go back out there again. Today's second encounter. I used to believe Dogman were fake until I saw one summer. It was around dusk and I had settled in, but it was still light enough to see. All of a sudden, my friend busts through the front door yelling about something in the neighboring field. I decided to entertain him and followed him out to the field. We walked about a half a mile, and I still didn't see anything, and I wanted to go back, but he insisted. So I reluctantly followed, and just before we reached the old slaughtering house, I saw a rather large canine about 70 feet away. It was sitting on its haunches, and I thought, that's a big dog, until it stood up and ran on both legs toward the old slaughtering house. Both of us thought it was a rather good idea to head for the hills, so we headed back to my house, and it followed us. By then it was dark, so we were about to retreat to my house and lock up, and then came a smell so foul and terrible. I still remember it. That terrible smell was only comparable to rotten human flesh. Just then it ran in front of us, about 30 feet away. I estimated its height to be 7.5 feet. We bolted in and stayed there for the rest of the night. But the dogs in the neighborhood would not stop barking. We went outside in the morning and the smell still lingered. The smell stayed for days, and on the third night around midnight, the sound of a window being forced out woke me up. I took a knife and explored and found that a window pane had been completely forced without breaking the glass. After the smell disappeared, and I haven't seen one since. There is no explanation for the animal, and there was no evidence, so I really don't know. I did decide to share this, but I really don't know what it was. I live near LBL, and people tell stories of a beast like the one I saw. Today's third part of the upload. I moved to a small town near LBL when I was 16. That was in the late 80s. I'd left Detroit and moved to the country with my dad. There's a lot of old ground in that area, and I would spend hours in the woods without ever seeing anyone. Two things struck me as odd about the area. Number one, I was given a 16-gauge shotgun and told never to go in the woods unarmed, which was odd because in Detroit my dad always told me not to get involved with guns. Number two, there were signs along the roads back then that said, do not exit your vehicle during hours of darkness. They said to lock your doors and turn on your hazard lights and wait for park services. I'd always assumed it was due to the amount of illegal activity that took place in LBL. They used to make moonshine in the area. Now it's mostly meth. I was stationed at Fort Campbell and used to hike LBL several times a week up until last year. I never saw anything out of the ordinary, but I stayed on well-used trails. Today's fourth part of the upload. A woman and her son who live on a mountain top in Breeding, Kentucky had reported what they described as a dogman, werewolf, bipedal canine type of creature. The woman said that the possible cryptid had been heard howling in a close vicinity of their property, and that one night the thing banged on the side of her house. They shot at the creature, but no blood or prints were found afterward. They also report that they have found evidence of something prowling around their land and still occasionally hear the howling, now in the distance. Kentucky has many canine-like related sightings and legends. The beast between the lakes, the wolf man that roams western Kentucky. There are others, including an interesting account from Bath, Kentucky. People who have seen Barilla say it's a beast with wolf-like features. Sounds like something found in fairy tales, but some researchers say people have seen the creature and even been attacked by it for decades right here in Kentucky. In Lex 18 Mystery Monday, Courtney Fisher goes in search of evidence of its existence. Kentucky's backwoods keeps quite a few secrets. Secrets that, if you're lucky, will reveal themselves, but some, no matter how patient you are, stay hidden. Barilla lurks in the woods, so the experts say, with the last known sighting occurring in 1989. The broad-shouldered beast has a body of a bear and a long, pointed muzzle like a wolf, hands with dagger-like claws and canine teeth. It's allegedly been seen through parts of Kentucky, Wisconsin, Michigan, Canada, Pennsylvania, with dozens of sightings reported. Of course, the first case in 1940s, said researcher Ron Coffey. A young boy claimed to be attacked on a creek bank by the creature. I don't discount that many eyewitnesses. Everyone's just not imagining things and making it up. Coffey's not found any bones or remains, but says he can prove Barilla exists, a plaster cast of footprint Coffey has. He found the track last winter in Bath County, and it matches the description of Barilla's footprint. Every single legend is based on some kind of fact, he states. Stories don't just materialize. Coffey may have been researching Barilla for more than 2 decades, but there's another person who's had eyes on the woods for just as long, and he lives right across the street. I think someone's trying to start a good hoax, said skeptic John Poe. With a laugh, that's my opinion. Poe says he has his own proof there is no Barilla. His roosters and his chickens roam the yard, and they have never been attacked by the monstrous beast. At night time, it's always peaceful and quiet, he said. You don't hear anything going on. And that's enough for Poe. To know that no 7-foot wolf-like creature is lurking the woods across the way. I'll believe it when I see it, he states. But Coffey says it's only a matter of time until another clue surfaces and another eyewitness comes forward, proving Barilla exists. Lex 18 wanted to talk to someone who claims they've actually seen Barilla, but Coffey says the last surviving witness recently died. That last part was a old news footage from Kentucky station, Lex 18 obviously, and covered the mysterious dog-like creature called Barilla. I've covered a few stories of the Barilla, which is just another name for a Dogman. Like the Gugwe is just another name for the Type 3 Sasquatch Kumbo discusses, or / werewolf. Too many names and too many confusion, I guess, with so many names. But the important thing is we know that there is something bipedal, hairy, that lurks the woods. Some look like an ape, some look like a huge, gigantic dog. Who knows? Today's fifth part is a little more history on the land between the lakes. The National Recreation Area in western Kentucky, that also runs down to Tennessee, called Land Between the Lakes, or LBL for short. It's situated between Kentucky and Barclay Lake, consisting of more than 300 miles of shoreline, 17,000 acres of forest, and over 200 miles of walking trails. It's currently a focal point for over a $6 million in tourist industry. Prior to 1959, before Kentucky and Lake Barclay dams were constructed, and before it was officially called LBL in 1963 by President John F. Kennedy, and before TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, the federal government used its powers of eminent domain to buy and tear down all the houses, businesses, and community buildings throughout the area, forcing over 700 families to give up their homes, took over the land, and the area was called Between the Rivers. There is over 228 small family cemeteries, many forgotten about and lost, dotted throughout the area, as it was once used as homes for the early Kentucky settlers. Some of the earliest graves date back to the early 1700s, which include graves of white settlers, veterans from nearly every war, including the Revolutionary one, and also those of black slaves and Chinese immigrants who worked in the iron furnaces that were in the area. There was also a very high infant mortality rate, and many of these children were buried right outside of their cabins from where they were born, so that their mother could peer out of the window and see the grave. There are also numerous Native American graves scattered throughout the acres, much older than even the earliest settlers. Others lie in secret beneath layers of leaves and forest ferns. Before the 1950s, it was always been a very rural area to live, with farmsteads far and few between, and with really no town to speak of except up at the north end of Grand Rivers. It was in this town, back in the mid-70s, that the beast between the rivers, or what is now the beast of LBL, was heard from. Some of the old-timers would sit on long wooden benches outside of the IGA that used to be an old country store for decades before the grocery conglomerate came to town. We used to hang around there on the weekends during the day and listen to stories they would tell each other. These old men, most of whom lived in the LBL before they were forced to move, had some very interesting stories to tell about the part of that country. There was talkings of hauntings, Indian curses, mysterious lights over gravestones at night, an old hag witch that lived deep in the woods, and more importantly, several tales of a wolf-like creature that stood on two legs that would come out of the thickets and attack their cattle and livestock day or night. A creature that was taller than the average man by well over a foot, nearly 7 foot tall, with thick, long hair covering its body, and the stench that matched, that some compared to open, fresh graves that were discovered now and then. This wolf creature left tracks like a barefooted man, but where the toes should have been, instead of were paw prints. The head was huge and wolf-like in appearance, with an extra long snout and uncanny long, sharp incisors that glistened from the moonlight with saliva, along with the eyes that radiated red, like those from the hottest fires in hell, they said. It had long arms that ended with huge hands, and long, spindly fingers with long, pointed, dirt-caked claws. At night, they would hear it howl, unnaturally guttural sounds of painful hunger and agony. And at that warning, all would go out and tie up their livestock, and even bring their prized selections inside of their homes with them. The legend of this beast went back at least hundreds of years and was passed along through time from family to family and updated as new sightings occurred. One old man said that his great-great-great-granddaddy told him the creature used to be a man, a Native American, that had the ability to shapeshift, a powerful shaman that had been outcast from his tribe because he used his magic for evil. The shaman had been tracked and killed while in his wolf state by a few warriors and a couple of settlers in the area. In his dying breath he cursed them and vowed to return from the dead to haunt the forests and seek revenge on their families and all who lived there. Another man on the bench with a leathery, weathered face said he heard from his grandma the beast was once a settler that came over from Europe back in the early 1800s with a disease that made him turn into a madman at night. The disease was eventually passed along to his children, which never went to school but stayed hidden away from the population. Many thought the family died off because for years they never seen or heard of them, and after investigations by some brave men, they discovered the homestead vacant and abandoned in the early 1900s. The sighting of the monster were still frequent throughout the beginning of the 20th century, and the elderly group on the bench each told some unsettling encounters they or members of their family had had with it. Each one told stories of finding livestock slaughtered, ripped to pieces, and eaten upon. Cows and pigs with their legs dismembered from the sockets. Even a few horses had met their end with savage attacks upon their body. A few of them describe what they saw at different times when they only caught glimpses of a figure by peeking out of the curtains or windows at night. One man said it jumped out of one of the horse stalls one evening while he was putting some animals up. It stopped in front of him, arms spread out like it was going to grab a hold of him, let out a howl, and sprang past him into the dusky shadows. This particular man said he wet his overalls during the episode. Another man said he never seen it, but would always hear its baleful wails frequently through the night. Not like the regular wolf or coyote. No, he said. It was more deeper, longer, stronger sounding than anything that would come out of any animal I have ever heard. Another old-timer said his wife had seen it trying to get into the chicken coop, but gave up after it got tangled in the chicken wire. They all had tales of someone's hound dog getting killed, ripped apart limb from limb, someone's pig or cow or chicken getting eaten, the mysterious footprints left in the mud, and the stench it left behind wherever it appeared. And more than one had the same story of listening to the walk across their front porches at night, and the scratches on their doors and walls, which would leave deep gouges in the wood. They would find that in the morning. All of them agreed that this was not a Bigfoot or Sasquatch. It would be only another year or two after hearing about this mysterious beast that I would have an encounter myself. Now, these are statements made from Jan Thompson, who grew up in the LBL, and her encounter I've shared on this channel just a couple of days ago. Her nephew was ripping through the woods on the trails with his dirt bike, and the creature followed him home, tearing his Levi's and causing a gash in his leg. The creature then stalked these young kids to their home. They barricaded themselves in the house, hid under the bed until the aunt or mom came back, and then it was gone. Very terrifying encounter, but a little more history that I wanted to share with you. Today's final part of the upload is an encounter that happened right around that area. It was probably a couple years ago. No, actually 2013. I had just started driving my truck. I got my truck after being trained and everything. I drove from Milwaukee, Wisconsin to Cherokee, Alabama. I've been driving. I didn't drive straight through, but I got up early this one day and got my load there on time. I was taking this load of paper, scrap paper, to Cherokee, Alabama, to a plant that makes tissue down in Cherokee. So I had gotten up early to finish out my load so I could get there on time. I drove probably 8 hours or something like that. Got my load delivered, picked up my trailer, got a hold of my dispatcher to find out what he wanted me to do next. He didn't have any work for me, so I said, I'm going to lie down for a little while. So I went in a little truck stop that was just down the road and took a nap. Got up and decided to have some lunch. Got some lunch, and while I was eating my lunch, I decided to get my next load, which was in Decatur, Alabama, which was probably an hour away or something like that from where I was in Cherokee. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less, somewhere in that range. So I went to pull out on this road, and there was this big black truck, all lifted up, all jacked up and everything. A large pickup truck. So I thought I'd let him go first, because he was moving. So when he passed, I pulled out and I got the whole truck straightened out. I got probably maybe, if I'd have to guess, 30 feet away from this guy. There's a big U.S. highway down there in Alabama. There are 2 lanes going one way and 2 lanes going the other way, divided by medians between them and then trees. You're kind of driving through the woods, trees on both sides of the road. If I had to guess, it was maybe 50 yards from the trees to the trees, maybe a little more, something like that. I'm driving along, just getting the truck straightened out, seeing what's going on around me. All of a sudden, out of the woods to my right, this thing came running, and it was running fast, and I mean fast. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was fast. So fast that I couldn't really tell you what it was, but I tell you this, it made that clearing from the woods to the road, which I could tell you was a good-sized clearing. It made that clearing from the woods to the road in about 10 steps. That's how fast it was going. That's how big the strides it was taking. But anyway, it crossed out in front of the road, and that big black truck in front of me, I don't even know if he knew that he hit it, but he hit it. Hit it right in the hip and turned it around, twisted it around, and it fell in a ball on the shoulder. The guy didn't pay no attention to it. I was thinking, what the heck was that thing? I know what it looked like, but I didn't want to sound crazy, so I drove by it. My windows were down because I was smoking, and so I'm slowing down to kind of look at it and see what it is. I'm looking out my window, and it's balled up in this ball. Whatever it was a big ball. This truck was jacked up, and it hit this thing in the hip, and it fell into a ball on the ground. When I drove by it, it was not dead, but it was mad, and I could see it. I could see all its hair. I couldn't see it, but it was mad. You could hear it, making this loud grunting noise like it was pissed. I went, well, whatever. I was like, I think I just saw a Bigfoot. Again, I don't know what it was. But I swear to God, I was not tired. I was not crazy. This thing wasn't big, enormous, like 7 or 8 feet tall, like how you'd think a Bigfoot would be. It was probably 6 feet tall. It wasn't enormously large, but still big. You could see when I drove by, loaded with muscle underneath all that hair. I got my load and I drove for a little while, got parked for the night, called Mrs. Irish Smoking Man, told him about it. They were still in amazement. My mom said, why didn't you go back and take a picture? Because I didn't know what it was. A bear? If it was a Bigfoot? I didn't know what it was. All I knew was that it was mad, and I wasn't going to figure out what it was in case it ripped me in half. Got home that weekend. We had a big party because my ex-sister-in-law had just graduated from nursing school. We all went out to dinner. Me, my brother, family, and her family and everything. We're kind of close with that family. So I told her dad about what I had seen, and he said that it was a bear. I never seen a bear other than in the zoo or on TV, so maybe it was a bear. But when I think of a bear, I don't think of a bear as running on its hind legs. When a bear gets up on its hind legs, it's more of an intimidation type thing. I see him take a couple steps, but I don't see him full out sprinting, running, and always think of that bear's hind legs. At least my head being a stubby kind of legs. This thing was fast, and it had big, huge, like normal people legs. But it had big, long arms. It took that stride like 10 steps before it crossed the road, and then crossed the road in like 2. That's my encounter, I guess. I don't know if it was a Bigfoot, Dogman, or what, but that's what I saw. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed today's upload. A little more history and a couple of more encounters from that area. That last part was not me messing up. That was literally how the guy wrote everything down. It was almost like he was talking as he was writing and writing everything he was saying. I don't really think that he hit a bear either. I think it was definitely more than likely a Dogman or a Sasquatch. Probably a Dogman, just judging how he described its speed and its height. That's just my take on that. But the LBL is definitely a mysterious place, and definitely a place that I really would love to go to. I don't know, I think I might compile or do a compile video of all LBL encounters that I've ever had, shared, or heard. No history, just straight up encounters, but maybe in the next couple of days. I just had a subscriber reach out to me from Louisiana, and she wants to share some encounters or stories that she's heard from being down there in Louisiana. So hopefully that'll be tomorrow. I emailed her, and maybe it'd be nice to have an interview and kind of rest my throat for a little bit. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's upload, and with that, I'm gonna bid you farewell and see ya.